Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So the European Central Bank put out a statement today talking about monetary policy. And if you're not familiar with the Central Bank of Europe, they share the Eurozone, which is a bunch of nations over in Europe, and they share a monetary policy. And they came out with a statement today saying that their monetary policy for the future is to take the debts that are rolling over. So they hold a bunch of bonds on their asset sheets, and they're going to take those bonds as they mature and roll them over into new bonds. So if you're not familiar with what's going on there, is that back in 2008 we ran into a financial crisis, and central banks all over the world started printing up money and buying the debts of the nations of the world, right? So for example, over in the United States, the Federal Reserve started printing up money and buying United States treasuries. Okay, they took these treasuries, they put them on their balance sheet, and they printed up liabilities, which were dollars, and they issued those into the system. Those started going into the housing market, stock market. That's where the big expansion came from. Same thing happened over in Europe, right? So but in Europe right now, the monetary policy for the future is going to be that they're going to take those bonds that are becoming due and they're going to roll them over into new bonds. So they kind of have like an easing thing going on. Over in the United States, on the other hand, the Federal Reserve, they're taking those bonds, and as they're becoming mature, and they're not rolling them over, and they're taking the money off the table, and they're essentially destroying the dollars, because once you take it out of the system, they're no longer there to chase the goods and services. So they're kind of in a tightening position, right? Well, what this means between the two is that if you had an even trade going on, and these guys are weakening, and these guys are tightening, then all of a sudden, 1-to-1 turns into 1 to 1.25, 1.5. So when these guys go to do exports to America, right, to the United States, these guys have to come up with the dollars to buy it, right? Well, what they're buying 1-to-1, all of a sudden goes to 1 to 1.5. They have to come up with 1, and they get 1.5. They get a 50% increase in their purchasing power. You see how that works? These guys can even keep their stuff the same. Like, they don't even have to shrink their monetary policy, and these guys continue to tighten, and it'll still do that, where the trade for dollars becomes stronger and stronger. And that's kind of what the situation that we're going into right now. So when you hear a lot of people talk about we need to raise or drop the interest rates to keep the expansion going, to keep the economy going, well, what you're saying is we need to continue to weaken the dollar, right? What the Fed is saying right now is we need to continue to strengthen the dollar. So if you can imagine that if everybody had a bunch of holdings right now and we continue to strengthen the dollar, the world's goods and services will begin to start getting cheaper and cheaper for America. Anyway, that's kind of what I see happening going on. Thank you, everybody. Uneducated Economist.